And the moment has arrived, folks. I finally got the engine back from the machine shop. About 18 months later. Yep, you heard that right. A year and a half later. We've got the pistons on the rods with the rings already installed on the rods, fully realigned and reshaped. We've got a fully remachined, rebored block, resurfaced, that match the pistons. We've got a crankshaft -10. And she looks good. But I can tell you right now, it was worth the wait. And I'm going to be careful here because the rings are on the pistons. Now I let the machine shop order the pistons. And these are 1 millimeter over. Everything's reshaped and resized properly. How do I know everything was done properly? Well, you just have to know who you can trust and who you can't trust. And they also ordered the bearings, the right size, crankshaft, and connecting rod. The oil pump, yeah, well, you get what you can get, you know. Now, I will have a little surprise in the future. Something that may not have ever been done before. I have found a seller on eBay who had a set of head bolts. And they are in pretty good looking shape. Now these are 160 or 161 engine head bolts. What does that mean? That means they came off of an Impulse, Isuzu Impulse or Gemini vehicle. But it is, for the most part, the same bolt. The only difference is the washer. It has a smaller washer. It is a thinner washer. It is a smaller diameter washer. And I will get into that later. But it's pretty much all here. I just need to get, I'm looking for a good timing chain set right now. And the pickings are kind of slim as far as getting a good set, because they're all aftermarket. That's all that's left on the market now. You can't find original equipment, Isuzu parts anywhere. But there is a good brand out there that still makes good timing chain parts. So there it is. Brand new engine. I'm working on getting it hooked up to this. I still have my old bolt connections to the last partial rebuild I did on the motor that's in the truck now. That was just a re-ring job. That's all that was. So this should be all adjusted and set up to go right on the back of that block right there. So we'll start working on that. I'm waiting on the gasket set, and that's all I got for now. So the engine is still in the truck. No need to remove it right away. I have been driving the vehicle for every day, 7 days a week, for 50 months, over 4 years, and it has been reliable every single day. But it is using a little bit of oil, and I just readjusted the carburetor today. It was running rich by about a quarter turn, and so it does have more power right now and less smoke coming out of the tailpipe. It was smoking really bad the last few days because I had a coolant leak. The radiator top was cracked right where it goes into the top of the intake manifold, and I didn't know it was leaking. And so one day, I noticed there was a small leak, and because I checked the radiator like 6 weeks ago, 7 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago, and it was low. I couldn't see any coolant in the top head of the radiator when I pulled the cap off. And I said, that's odd, that's kind of strange, because it always has coolant topped off, it never leaks. So I thought, well, maybe I'm developing a head gasket leak. Of course, that's always what people do, how they think it's the worst possible thing, right? Oh no, I got a crack in the head gasket's blown, it's leaking coolant, burning it into the combustion chamber. Everybody thinks it's the worst thing. They don't see any leaks on the ground or around the engine, so they automatically think that, since they don't see any leaks around the engine or the radiator hose or anything, that it's not leaking externally, they automatically think that it's the head gasket's blown and it's burning it. And my vehicle was smoking white smoke for the last several months, I've noticed, in the morning, usually when it's cool. There's a lot of condensation, but it's really blowing a lot of white smoke out during startup. But it usually went away, after the engine vehicle was warmed up and the choke was fully open, unloaded. So I wasn't really concerned about it, but I was driving the other day and the temperature gauge was up, like getting up there. I mean, it wasn't down near the cold mark, it was like up high past the middle, which is starting to overheat, because usually the needle's down to the bottom. It's pointing downward at like a 45-degree angle to the cold mark, and horizontal, if the needle was horizontal, that would be halfway between cold and hot. That's the way my gauge works. That's the way these gauges are on this. Horizontal needle is halfway between cold and hot. So it was just starting to rise above midway, so I knew the engine was overheating. And then it started smoking. Like smoke was just rolling out of the tailpipe, and it was kind of a bluish smoke. It was like blue, and then it went to like black once in a while, and so that would be fuel. That would be excess fuel not burning. Gray smoke. Gray smoke's usually fuel, unburned fuel, and that's probably why when I adjusted the carburetor, I noticed it started running better, and I'm getting more power now. I was a quarter of a turn too rich on the fuel mixture all this time. That's probably why my gas mileage has been a little bit poor lately. So, but after I adjusted the carburetor, it cut the smoke by 50%. 50% of the smoke went away, but there's still smoke coming out of the tailpipe when I accelerate, and it changes color. The smoke changes color from it's not white smoke, it's kind of a blue to gray smoke. It's a little mixture of smoke going on, but it's usually only on acceleration now after I adjusted the carburetor. But before, it was just bellowing out like a locomotive, and because it was missing while it was overheating when I was driving it the other day, and it was out of coolant. The engine was way overheated. It was hot. The spark plugs were like red hot. I pulled the plugs on them, and they're just covered in white, like a white, ash coating that's hardened like ceramic. And so I knew the combustion chamber's temperature was hot, and it was probably detonating. So I was getting detonation. That's why it was missing. But it was smoking really bad. Now when I got out and started it this morning, the smoke was. This is before I had adjusted the carburetor. Well, I adjusted the carburetor yesterday, just a little bit, like 1/8 of a turn in, to run leaner, and that seemed to help where there was less smoke this morning when I started it up. And actually 2/8 turns. I made 2/8 turns yesterday, so almost a quarter turn in. And I started up this morning, and it was very limited, very light. I couldn't even see the smoke most of the time. It was very, very clear looking through the whole cold startup phase until it got warm. So I took it for a drive a little while ago, and it was pretty good. It was pretty clear, except when I started to accelerate. And so I stopped somewhere like a mile and a half away, and I turned it back in another 8th turn, and that's probably as far as I'm probably going to leave it right there. That's probably enough. So I turned it in about 3/8 leaner, and I'm pretty sure I'm pretty close to like 1.5 to 1 3/4 now turnout on that fuel mixture adjustment screw, which is where it's supposed to be. And the smoke has cut down about 60%, 70%, so it's looking a lot better, but it's still smoking a little bit. So I think there was there could have been some sort of damage from the engine overheating while I was driving it the other day, not realizing that it was overheating while I was driving it, and which is really unfortunate, but you know, stuff happens, right? So I'm sure that if I replace the head gasket on it, it would probably be less smoke. But the problem is I got a bad valve guide on the number 3 cylinder intake that I never fixed when I put the head back on, when I re-ringed it. And that's been the problem, is that number 3 cylinder's been fouling with oil, and I'm pretty sure that's because it's a worn out valve guide. The valve's kind of wobbling inside that valve guide, and oil's getting through, being sucked in on the intake stroke. So, you know, I'm not going to pull the head off right now and put a new head gasket on when I've got a new engine ready to go in the garage shop. So I'm not going to waste my time with it. I'm just going to keep driving it like it is. I might even throw maybe some head gasket sealant, some of that Blue Devil stuff, which I've been wanting to try, because you know, everybody seems to give it positive feedback, and the truck's still running good, you know, still running smooth. So if there is a head gasket leak, I can just throw some Blue Devil in this thing, and that'll probably help cut down on the smoke if there's a crack in the gasket bringing oil in. And another possibility is when it was overheating and misfiring on the cylinder, that there was just a bunch of excess oil that wasn't getting burned, and it just got sucked into the cylinder, and it was blowing out. There was too much oil going in, or it's kind of just pushing it out through the exhaust, excess oil that wasn't being able to burn all the oils, and a lot of it was just spitting out of the exhaust valves. And there could have been some oil buildup in the exhaust manifold, and that's what's smoking. And it's taking a few days to burn that out. And so I'm going to give it. I'm watching, and it may have just already, because it wasn't smoking much today, just a little bit. So maybe that was the deal, was that there was just oil spitting out into the exhaust manifold because it was misfiring and not being able to burn it when it was misfiring. Because I do have that intake valve guide that's bad. So I don't know, it seems to be getting better. You know, the smoke seems to be going away slowly, day by day. So I'm going to watch it for next week and see what it looks like. But I'm still going to put that new engine in this truck, because that is That's the goal. That's always been the goal. I've waited 18 months for this machine shop to return the engine to me, and so that's what we're going to do. And you're probably asking me, well, what took so long? Why did it take 18 months to get your engine back from the machine shop? Well, for one reason, I wasn't really in a hurry for it because the truck was running so good and it wasn't a big deal. It wasn't using much oil. So I just said, I told the machine shop that there's no rush, and I wanted it done right, so it didn't matter how long it took. I just wanted to make sure it was done right, and that's why I took it over to this local machine shop, and they are the best in the business. The machine shop is owned by a couple guys who used to be race car drivers. They had their own race team, and I'm not going to name their name, but they've been in business for 30 to 40 years, 35 to 40 years. They moved their shop around. They did have a shop that was more downtown located, but they decided to move it because the city had too many regulations and it was costing them too much money in permits and regulation crap, that story. So they moved kind of out in the county area, more rural, a lot farther away from downtown, and really nice shop, and great guys running the place, and so I'm just glad to have the engine back so I can get that thing loaded in this truck finally. And I know that it is done right. I haven't even checked anything. And you're probably asking, well, how do you know? Because these guys have a reputation. See, I've known them for years. Probably I've known them for like 5 years. They rebuilt my head like 4.5, 5 years ago for this truck, which I still have in the garage. Haven't really used it. And that's going to go on the engine. It's the original head that goes on the engine. And so I know them well enough. I know their history, their background. And I mean, let's face it, these guys are former race car drivers, had a race team. They know how to build engines, and they know everything. They know everything. They got all the connections for parts and everything. And they did have to replace the crankshaft. The crankshaft that was in this original motor was too far gone to reground. So they just called their parts supplier and they got another crankshaft which was like new. It was only like 10 thousandths or something. It was like minus 10 thousandths. So yeah, good crankshaft that they found, low wear. And so that's about it for right now. I'm going to do another video on the head bolts. I'm not going to reuse the same head bolts that are on this engine, or the head bolts that came from the original motor, because they kind of have a little wear, on the threads, kind of chewed up a little bit on the threads here and there, and they've been used like 2 to 3 times already. So I bought these new head bolts, and I'm going to do something that has probably never been done before that I know of. Well, it might have, but I just don't know. since these head bolts came off, they have smaller washers on them. I'm going to remove the washers from the original head bolts, and I'm going to put them on the G200 head bolts, and I'll do another video on that later. So that's all I got for now, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.